We're going to go ahead and start recording. Sorry, didn't mean to miss or interrupt Miss Vice Chair. But if you're ready to go, we'll go ahead and call it to order.
Okay, so is this going to be an official meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess I'll call the meeting to order.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just do roll call. Elizabeth Wados, Leah Knudsen, Gerald Romero,
Present.
Here.
Paul Sagner, Miss Vice Chair Ana Maria Armijo,
Present.
Nancy Fernandez Jeffries,
Present.
Miss Carol Bess,
Present.
and Mr. Shane Flores.
Present.
And I know that Miss Leah is having trouble, I think, with her mic, just like I was. She did put in the comments, just for the record, that she is present. Roll call's done. Approval of agenda,
So
Ms. Vice Chair. Does anybody have make a
an
motion to
agenda
approve?
here.
This is Gerald. I haven't seen an agenda, so I'm not sure what we're approving.
Okay, so it wasn't sent out. I have it here. I got Dr. Wallace that sent it out. Is it okay with committee that I go over the agenda verbally before we consent to it?
Sounds good.
Yes, please.
Yes.
I have discussion item A is GRP phasing graphic and supporting narrative. B is going to be other information relating to the phasing project. C, priorities discussion. D, purpose versus opportunistic funding. Identify opportunities for funding sources. And E of the discussions, considerations for Riverwalk Park MOUs, City of Las Vegas with Hermit's Peak Watershed Alliance, and the City of Las Vegas with West Las Vegas Schools, Hermit's Peak Watershed Alliance, in regards to the Unity Orchard project. Does anybody want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion made by Ms. Armijo. Is there a second?
I'll
Second by
second.
Mr. Romero. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I
Aye.
Item number 4 was approval of minutes. I know that we had sent it out to Ms. Chair and Mrs. Vice Chair. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes from last meeting?
No.
No?
No.
have
Okay.
who Stephen, you were the one that sent it last time.
Yes, ma'am. We had our office, Miss Alexis McAdams had typed up the minutes and then sent out for any corrections that needed to be on it as the draft minutes. And I know that Miss Elizabeth has commented that there was no corrections, but I am hearing that it wasn't shared with everybody. Do I have? You received them also?
I received it.
I might have just missed it.
Yes.
At this time, Ms. Chair, do I have your consent to put it in front of the committee to table for the next meeting? To
Yes.
make sure everybody has adequate time to look at the minutes?
Yes. I so move to table the
Only
approval of the
correction
minutes
that I
till
had
next
was
meeting.
just the spelling.
Second.
So we have a motion by Mr. Romero, a second by Mr. Stagner. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Miss Vice Chair, I know it kind of cut off. You had one suggestion, ma'am, on the last minutes.
It's just the spelling of my name. It's not Ana Marie, it's Ana Maria with an A. And
Yes,
my
ma'am.
last name is hyphenated, Armijo Glenn.
Okay.
Can anybody hear me yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Very cool. Finally.
So item number 5, public input. Miss Vice Chair, I have to this point received no public input. And then now going to item number 6, committee members report. We start, Ms. Chair isn't here, Dr. Wados, so does anybody else have any other report before we get into discussion items?
No.
No.
Okay, discussion items. Then we'll get into is the GRP phasing graphic and supportive narrative. And I'm sorry, I don't want to take full control. I'm not, Ms. Vice Chair. If you'd like to, I don't know if you've had any discussions with Dr. Wados.
Are you
Deb,
talking?
it was my. Go ahead, Leah.
The last discussion that I had with Dr. Waters was that Groundwork Studios is putting the phasing report together. It's not completed yet, but it should be any day. And that will include their recommended order of operations of the tasks, plus a budget for each area that we reviewed last time. But that's all I've got right now.
Well, I have a question. Without that information, my understanding was the main purpose of this special meeting was to discuss our priorities that could possibly be presented to the legislature for appropriation. And without the Groundwork Studios ordering of priorities, I don't see how we can make any decisions today.
I also feel like it's pretty rough to make decisions without Elizabeth Wadros as well, because she always has information that we don't have.
Yeah.
I know one of the two things, we had a discussion with them a week or so ago, and two things that they were saying would be very important to complete first would be the trail and irrigation. And the trail south of Bridge Street is completed, so that means the main trail north of Bridge Street, and then irrigation throughout. But that was not a formal conclusion because they hadn't completed their recommendations yet.
So I got a question regarding that, Leah, because I know last meeting we had thought that the trail revamp was going to be too big of a project for the bucket of money we have. Is there anything that binds the decision making to what Groundwork Studios produces, or can we take their recommendations and still make separate recommendations as a committee? And how those needs fit the city and the constituents?
I don't think we're bound to their recommendations. They're giving us recommendations for what is practical,
Okay.
And logical. We can make other decisions. Stephen, do you know anything different that we're bound to their recommendations?
With the discussion I had with Dr. Wados this morning was that it was going to be a little different as far as they're phasing it out and they're going to give us the cost and what should be completed in each phase, step for step. But then that's going to be brought back to this committee to provide recommendations to mayor and council with the monies that are remaining on where we should proceed. So they're not going to say, okay, that we need to do order priority is actually going to be decided between this subcommittee and then mayor and council. They're just going to provide us the exact detail of, okay, so this, if it's going to cost $200,000 for this section, and they're all doing it color coded. So if we're looking at the green section of the Riverwalk that they identified, it's going to cost $200, and these are the steps in that phase that has to be completed in that order.
All right, thank you for that clarification, Stephen. And
Yes, sir.
Leah.
And then the latest that I heard this morning is that they're going to be another week with it. So we won't have the final one until January.
I'm sorry, would you say that again?
So the final phasing plan by Groundwork Studios won't be ready till January.
Okay, thanks.
So they're going to have the initial one ready next week or at the end of this week, and then it will go to mayor and council as far as any suggestions, and then we'll have the final one.
And what is the deadline for encumbering the funds that we are trying to spend?
So the deadline we do have until 2023.
Oh, okay.
In order to ask, we've been kind of told that if we're going to ask for more, they're going to want to know if we spent what we've already been or what we received.
Okay, so we're not on an extreme deadline in the next month or anything.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Ms. Chair, welcome. I'll let you you have that
Hi,
nice
everyone.
background of council chambers behind you.
Howdy.
Yeah, I just had to take the opportunity because it's been hard to get together with people, and sorry about being so late. I hope I didn't mess up anybody's schedule there. So have you guys have been talking about updates so far? Should I just dive right in? Let's see.
Sure.
I'll share my screen. Let's see. All right. So just a simple agenda today. I wanted to let everybody know that, as I said last time, we are working with Groundwork Studio to get the details of our basically take the whole budget for the river park and break it down into geographical regions and we're asking them to help us also with advice for phasing. So I'm going to show you that document, one of the supporting documents here. It's very small print, so I'm going to zoom in. Can everyone see this? It's the whole document goes from Mills Avenue downstream, cross Bridge Street, and to Prince. And notice that if you zoom in, there are different color-coded regions. So right by Bridge Street, there's a region, this green one, the Bridge Street Entrance Plaza, it's called. And this region, the terrace seating, flower bed. The region just south of Bridge Street, the South Bridge Street Gateway, playground, exercise area, and supporting trails. So what we're getting here is the whole park divided into regions where we can know information about the total budget that it would take to accomplish construction of that particular region, and including what if there's demolition, and including kind of all the bits, project management and all that. So we'll have a good sense of what it will cost for each particular area. Something I just wanted to note so that it kind of takes a lot of the pressure off of us, as we were talking last time, it takes a little bit of the pressure off of us to decide priorities, is that we don't have this fully complete yet, so I'm not going to give you an absolute clear picture of it, but the essence of the conversation is that from Bridge Street South compared to Bridge Street North, we're going to treat those differently when it comes to coming up with priorities, because south of Bridge Street, the path is already complete, but north it's not, it needs to be redone. So there are some things that have to be done first north of Bridge Street before anything else can be done. South, there's fewer things that have to be done first. So we're kind of getting that recommendation from the architect point of view. And then, so they're going to give us a list of things that really you've got to get the foundation in, so to speak. And then after that, for all these colored regions you see, many of them are going to be independent of one another in the sense that one could be done before the other, depending on the funding available, the source of funding, and what our and the city's recommended priorities are. So I just wanted to let you know that, and let me come back over here to our agenda. So I would give time for updates, but I was so late that I think you guys did that already. So anyone chime in if you'd like to sort of jump in and say anything. Maybe we'll do it at the end. So the business items that we're focusing on are the priorities discussion. I just kind of wanted to let you know the pieces that we have where there's some room for maneuvering and to get your suggestions there. And then we can go forward. So let's see if I can, there's nothing there. So let me know if it would be helpful for you to see that graphic. And I'm going to share it with you as soon as it's complete, but it's not quite complete yet. So that's why I haven't emailed it to everybody. When it comes to priority discussion, north of the trail, north of Bridge Street again, it's the trail and any irrigation have to be done before any lights or benches or things are put in. After that, after trail and irrigation are done, then lights and benches can be accomplished, and then each of those geographical regions can be accomplished. South of the trail, a whole variety of pieces could be tackled there. The only thing about south of the trail is that the trail was complete before the irrigation was installed in the irrigation in the plan. So that's something that could be done at any point now. We kind of missed the boat on that, so we'd have to kind of come back in anyhow. But lights and benches can be installed right away because the path is done. The unpaved trail, the trail on the west side and other areas of unpaved trail can be done at any time. And it's recommended also that the gate areas, what I'm understanding from Groundwork Studios, that it's recommended that all the gateways not be done at the same time because there's some demolition done with each one, but rather the gates be done in the particular geographical region where they are. So I just kind of wanted to open it up to any questions or comments or concerns so we can kind of get a sense of where you all kind of lie on the priorities discussion here.
I have a question. If referring specifically to the North Trail, but if the trail itself and the irrigation are the priority, when we go to the South Trail with the trail already in, but the irrigation not, it seems like that would be a good place to start. If that's a priority up north, it should be a priority on the south side, perhaps. And my question is, are we still talking about the use of effluent water there, or are we talking about the use of city water?
So all the irrigation, now I understand this. Thanks for asking that, Paul. All the plans for irrigation in the whole river park, except for one specific area I'll mention after, but all the way through, the plans for irrigation are city water, not effluent. There are some issues with two things: nearer to the water, possibly, and also near the water filling station. That it was recommended that we don't have effluent water near there. So it's city water. So this is important to keep in mind. It's an expensive thing. It's nice to have, but the city water will be under restrictions when there's drought. So it's not the answer to all problems. So it's worth considering. Do we need to have some kind of a backup method for irrigation here? I don't want to open the can of worms too much, but this is a tricky problem. So the only area that I understand there may be some effluent is connected to a particular project right now called the Arboreta project near Mills and near the recycling center, because that particular project has applied for and received a permit, as I understand, and anybody please add to that if you know, for that particular region. It's a native plant garden that a garden that celebrates native plants.
A little further question. Does that mean that effluent water, except for in the Arboretum area, is not even on the table?
That's right. Yeah.
Because from the standpoint of green things, if we put in an irrigation system and we don't have access to water, it's going to be very, very difficult to landscape. I mean, plant things, and then we could have 2 or 3 years of not being able to water them, and that's a big problem.
Yeah.
I think in order to have an alternate, because it's I don't see how it's going to work if we maintain, being in this drought situation. But, the idea that I tossed out at the last meeting, and I don't think I may have just done it with a few people, is when I walk along there and I see all of these giant roofs along the Riverwalk, and it might be possible at some point, to collect the water off those roofs and distribute it either, immediately or store it or whatever. But that is one possibility to acquire some water. And maybe Gerald could help with that, with tanks and expertise.
Yeah. Okay. This is an important conversation because if the irrigation line that we have is not useful, it's also really expensive. This is something to keep in mind, that it's worth considering if that's the best path forward. Gerald, I see your hand up.
Yes. My question was directly related to the irrigation. So when we talk installation of irrigation, to what level of completeness is that? Is it, a stub off of the city line where it can be, tapped into later? Is it like development of the entire irrigation system for that one section? Because that makes a really big difference. If it's limited to only the tap that can be developed later, then that kind of suffices a little bit, knowing that we're not going to have city water to water our plants. We have to be real about that.
Yeah.
The city water option is not going to happen. Forecast models for climatology and everything over the next 50 years are going to preclude us from being able to do that. So we have to move forward knowing that that's probably not an option anymore. But if we have the tap in place, where if conditions were to change and we could utilize that, then it's a good resource to have. But if the irrigation install means all the way through completion without even knowing what plants we're going to be using, the whole 9 yards, it makes a significant difference.
Thanks for bringing that up, Gerald. That's really important you ask. And as I understand, and I'm going to bring this up again to Groundworks to be sure I completely understand, because again, it's in the plans, but a little bit hard to understand if you're not expert in this area. It's not just a tap. The plans show the tap plus a line running. So I think they're not showing everything down to, say, a full drip system in a particular area, but lines running from the tap. And the two main taps are one by Prince Street, where there exists a line already, as I understand, and I hope I'm telling you correctly, and I'm going to follow up and make sure. But I just got the description from Groundworks. There's a line there, and already a place where there exists a meter that could be refurbished. So the line would then run from Prince all the way up along the trail. Not to water the whole way. This is not to make sure there's irrigation the whole way, but to make sure there's irrigation in certain key areas where there already are plans for plants, and the plants are even just defined in the design pretty clearly. I think there's a little bit of room for maneuvering, but they're already laid out. So there'd be some vines along some of the chain link fence area that would need some drip system irrigation, and a few other places. The other tap is near the walking bridge that's north of Bridge Street. There's a water line that goes along there where there was a tap that was done, part of a grant to put in that water filling station. And I think it would be the same tap or one right near there that would address the irrigation around Bridge Street and then up along north along the path. So it's a good question, Gerald, is that Gerald brings up, is that something that even though we're not sure if we will have the accessible city water to water with, do we want to do that just in case? It's a fair question because that's a big price tag that goes with that.
Yeah. It's also true that in years where we don't need the city water, that's when the city water is going to be available because of the water, because of the water.
Because it's raining already. Exactly.
Because it's raining, we don't need it. It's when it's a drought, that's when we need it, So it is it's a gnarly.
I mean, that's the argument for both what Gerald and Carol say, which we touched on at the last meeting, which is how much do we really want to commit to plants that need watering, which increases the likelihood that they're, non-indigenous plants anyway. And we have options for some of these things that we want to accomplish that might be different.
Yeah.
I mean, do we have things that can survive a drought? Now, this addresses the larger question, which is like, how substantially is the climate changing anyway to where plants that were previously workable in this region may not be in 10 to 20 years, but like do we have options for vines that don't need to be watered regardless, so that we can afford to commit to something like, rainwater collection on rooftops and some of the other ideas we talked about, so that dependence on the city water becomes non-existent?
Well, the issue is that even things that are very drought resistant need irrigating to get going, so
right, I forgot about that.
They need water for a year and at least supplemental watering. So that's the tricky part,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's virtually nothing other than maybe some annuals and grasses that we could plant that wouldn't need, as Carol says, wouldn't need water for at least the first couple of years.
Right.
And I'll give you a little insight into the climatology, because I sit on a committee that's actually reviewing tree species for the entire state. And by the year 2080, which will probably all be gone by then, Las Vegas is supposed to be a zone 8A or 8B. So we're looking at very desert-like.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to know and realize in making a plant and tree selection that we need to be planning for that. I think, I don't know if Groundworks has taken that into account, but this list is going to be distributed statewide probably next year sometime.
Yeah.
And we had some really healthy discussions trying to figure out what's going to work here and what's not. And some of the species that don't live here now are going to thrive here then. So I just wanted to throw that out as kind of the forecasting, how far out we're looking.
Yeah. Thank you, Gerald. That's so important to consider. Paul, you have your hand up?
No, I was trying to remove that, but I haven't been able to figure out how to remove that
Just
icon.
press your hand again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure this is something that it would be great to have you who are experts in this area look at the design and check. The planting list is there. The plants that are suggested are listed. So if there's any red flags about the ones that aren't appropriate, as I understand with my kind of limited knowledge of it, it seems like a lot of the plants are the ones that are more drought resistant and native. But let's double check that, because definitely we don't want to waste any effort and consider planting anything that doesn't belong there, or it takes too much effort to keep there. Like, for instance, we're not going to have any areas of turf or anything like that. So there's enough places like that. Okay. I'm so glad you guys help us kind of think about this, because when it comes to making a plan for priorities on paper, of course, irrigation is one of the first things to deal with. It's one of the first things to make sure that we address carefully if we want to have any landscaped areas at all. And it's also one of the most complicated situations. Like, here we are looking forward to 2080, and we really need to. This funding is precious. We don't have infinite funding. And if we waste it on something, if we use it, I shouldn't say waste. If we use it on something that becomes a waste, that's just a shame. So we should be really careful, and we have people who are knowledgeable about the fact that the situation is changing. We can't just kind of refer back to our childhood and say it'll always be the same way, right?
So I have a question regarding the timeliness, right? Since that's what we're talking about today, because I guess I was unclear about it after the last meeting. You know, there's discussion over this, like rainwater tanks versus just a tap to the city's supply for, I mean, the irrigation that needs to go in will be the same regardless. But so my question is, supply side, would the investment in rainwater tanks, rooftop rainwater tanks, if that becomes the thing, something that can be done later, or does it have to be done in this phase with this money?
No, it could be done later. Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that for myself. So thank you.
And that's,
Right. The other thing that's a possibility too is we've been experimenting at the district with using storage tanks and drip systems to be able to establish vegetation, and it shows that it's got some promise. I've done that on a couple of plantings out in the middle of nowhere, and you put a tank up, put a real low budget drip system to it. You still have to deliver water, but it does the hand watering for you. And, you know, these are things that could be possibly developed, you know, either through the funding, through, you know, that we seek on this, or we can find the funding for it, you know what I mean? But it's showing promise that it could work.
So Gerald, the question on this, but this is general for the group. Sorry to keep on this, but I think it's an important one, this irrigation thing, since we know it's important. If the piping that would go in the immediate, the short term, the stuff that it doesn't matter what's feeding it, it's the same piping. Does that change, Gerald, if we're talking about your kind of systems that you're experimenting with? Would that change the nature of what we do need to put it now in the immediate?
No, because drip can be set up for both low gravity and high gravity feeds.
Okay.
Where you have to be very careful is not to mix the two systems. So you will always have to put, you know, backflow preventers, filters, and the whole 9 yards to prevent any of this catchment water from being able to get into the potable water system. But you can set them up to where it can accommodate both.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks.
And the other thing I was going to mention too is that I think it's really worthwhile looking at what it's going to cost to put in that piping for the city water, and really take a good hard look at it, you know, once we get those numbers, and see if it's worth it or not, because I think there's still an inherent value to having it there, but we need to know what that value really is and if it's really a feasible option or not.
okay, Gerald, that really helps to kind of look at, because I know what I do understand is that in the design there isn't anything that specifies tanks or rainwater catchment, not specifically. But because that doesn't really depend on so much other infrastructure, it could be, this is something that it has the possibility of being added if it's okay with the city. So I think you're right. Let's all have our eyes peeled for when we get the cost associated with irrigation, because what we're getting is piecing out this budget so that we know what the different geographical regions will cost, but plus what the path from Bridge North will cost, and what the irrigation altogether will cost, so that we can have a clear sense of what we're comparing here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll take a good hard look at the irrigation plan, because I understand a lot of that too. I haven't been able to dedicate much time to it, but I can pretty much figure out what they're planning on doing. And if it's just a service line with nothing else, then that's worthwhile. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But if it involves a little bit more install than that, I don't know that we need to go there yet. So
Right.
Okay.
I'll let you know
Yeah.
what I see in there.
Wonderful. And then I'm going to have, Gerald, the projected budget, the probable opinion of probable cost for that. We're going to get, they're supposed to turn it in to us at the beginning of next week. So we'll
Okay.
have a sense of that. We get to review and ask questions. It's not going to be finalized until early January, just because of the holidays, but I'll have a sense so I can get that information to you guys too, so we can make a better judgment of, you know, are we talking about spending tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, you know, or thousands or whatever it is, and then we can compare what the value is for how much it cost.
Okay.
Paul, I see you there.
Yeah, just a clarification. I understood that maybe this meeting we were going to talk about getting priorities and we have been. I'm not saying that, but was it because of the upcoming legislative session and we wanted to be able to show that we had spent their money? Or is there no timeline that we have to worry about right here? That's my question.
Yeah, Paul, that's a really good question. Technically, as Stephen said at the beginning, there's no hard deadline for timeline. But the fact is that the legislators want to see money that they've allocated spent. So the sooner that the funds from leftover from last year and the year before are spent, the better it will be for the city's request for more funds. So really, this is just one of those things that it will be best if we can do this. When we talked last time, everyone, I just want you to know, I didn't realize we'd be so close to having this information coming from the architects, this priority list. They're helping us make it, because it is true that it's hard for us to make it because we're not architects and we can decide what's important to our community, but we need to also know what is the equivalent to the foundation and what's equivalent to the second story, make sure not to do the second story first. So Paul, that's right. Yeah, we're looking at several things at the same time. We're going to have help getting an idea of what the priorities are. But even when we know that, there's still going to be some room for deciding what could be done first, because we have this division between north and south of Bridge Street, where the first steps will be different on one side and the other because of the state of the project right now.
Okay, but we don't have a deadline of any kind.
No, not a huge deadline.
Good.
Leah, I see you there.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. It seems like we can really focus our discussion on two different parts. One part is that to use as many funds that we have available right now, it seems like that the only area that really makes sense to talk about is south of Bridge Street. And so it seems like we should try to come up with priorities for what happens next south of Bridge Street. And then that would lay the foundation for our capital outlay request. And it also seems to me that the capital outlay request would be a perfect time to put in a request to do the trail and or irrigation, depending on how much those two things cost. And north of Bridge Street would be that request once we get that budget. So it seems like, I mean, this is just my take on all of this, is that it seems like right now we could focus our discussion on what we could use existing dollars to do south of Bridge Street. And we already have purchased benches. There are a few other pieces that are already in line, but it seems like we should take south of Bridge Street and just focus right there on that discussion right now. How does that sound like as far as an approach is concerned?
Yeah,
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and then to go along with that, and then I'll get to you, Gerald, to go along with that so the first piece is like, okay, there are some funds. Let's help to figure out what the first priorities are. South of Bridge Street is easier to tackle first because of the state that it's in. That leads right to the next question of, something that we will do in the future here is like each of us, everyone here has a kind of a different expertise. And so we're taking our funding that we have, opportunistic funding that just happens to be here. But the next steps too are that we're going to want to look at, there are certain funding sources to pay for certain things. So for example, if we can get funds to pay for making paths, we can focus on that. We don't have to only go to capital outlay for everything. ADA accessible areas, are there particular places where those can be funded? I'm sure Gerald Romero knows about a lot of funding connected to various areas of the park as well. So we can we could be more systematic about how we go about funding as well. Gerald, your hand's up.
Yeah, my question was very related to Paul's. Is capital outlay going to be requested this legislative session?
Yeah, I just got the note that this Guyanus River Park is on the city's ICIP list.
Okay.
And they are going to take it to the capital outlay, to the legislature, and they're going to request.
Do you know how much we're requesting?
That I don't know exactly. I think we
Okay.
need to coordinate. I think it's going to be the city manager that will tell us exactly. I think right now on the list, there's a sort of the total project cost and then divided into how many years they're planning to request. So it's some chunk of money, but it's not right now dependent on the particular parts that we're looking at funding next, which would probably be a good idea to organize that. And that's what I think we're here to do, to try to help set that out. So set a plan, a project plan with what should be absolutely done first and next, and then with a list of things that could be done mixed and matched after that. But what ones are the most important according to whatever perspectives we're looking at.
Well, when the city submits this, don't they have their own priority list? I was under the impression that they did that. They list the projects according to their own priority. And maybe we should also find out, in addition, how much they're asking for, but where we fall in that list of priorities. Because if we're like number 5 or something, then we don't have to count on too much money. If you see what I'm saying. I mean, if there are other projects, big projects ahead of us, then maybe it doesn't really matter.
Oh yeah, and we can find that out definitely. I think in the past, this project has never been in the top 10, and I think it is now. But I want to confirm that I heard that, but I don't know if that's actually finalized. They may not be done with that discussion here yet. So I think they're working on that. So it's interesting to know, what number on the list and what the request amount is. That's something I can get that information. Stephen probably could get it even faster than I could.
The other question I had too, Miss Dr. Wados, was did we ever get a number of how much money is left over?
Oh yes, I got that. I got that. Okay, so we have left over from so this is from capital outlay that was appointed last year, which they just recently received, and then the capital outlay from the year before. Also, so that it was about $270,000 was left from that money, not spent yet. But the city council voted in with some extra funds that they had, and I don't know exactly where they're from, so I'm sorry about not understanding the details, but there was some extra funding that they were allotted this year, and they chose to put $45,000 more towards the river park. So there's about $328,000 in that the city has. This is the city's money that's specifically for the Guyanus River Park. So that's kind of like the first, to get a sense of the first step that we're looking at. That's the amount of money that there is to work with that's open.
I get 315,000. Did you say 270 and plus 45?
Yeah, about 272. I'm just kind of rounding.
Okay. And that's 315.
Oh, can I not add?
Or maybe I can't add.
I can do I could do like differential calculus, but I can't do arithmetic to save my butt.
It's okay. It's okay.
So 300 plus thousand, like it's a pretty big chunk, but at the same time, I think I always feel like it's kind of scandalous. Every price tag on these things is like, there's nothing that's that very
So
cheap.
Does it make sense to talk about the priorities south of Bridge Street? Or do we even have time to talk about any of those priorities right now?
So suggested from Groundwork Studio, south of Bridge Street, here's what they're saying, that there's from the engineering architect point of view, many different pieces could be tackled at any particular time. Of course, irrigation is one that will have the same problems now as it would later, so we could tackle that. The lights could be tackled. The benches that are here and and waiting to go in could be installed south of Bridge. All the unpaved trails, there's quite a few unpaved trails that could be worked on. And then I like to also note that the gateways could be done, but it's suggested that they be done kind of piece by piece. So with that kind of a suggestion there, does anyone have any any kind of thoughts on what pieces within that kind of that amount of money could be, which ones rise to the top for priorities?
Well, maybe at this point, until we get the information from groundwork, where we have actual numbers on these projects, like the paths, the finishing the lighting, et cetera, it's sort of moot to discuss what we want to do when we don't know how much anything's going to cost.
Exactly.
We now do know what our bottom line is, but we don't know what the individual items will cost.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Paul, but I'll also put in a plug for the lights and the benches. These are already things that are in progress. Finish them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cross them off the list.
Yeah.
Do we have the lights and benches and they just need to be installed, or do we still have to buy more?
Just benches. We have the benches, but we'll have to buy more lights. So the benches are bought and paid for, not within that that amount of money. And so we could put those in, the ones that are not north. On the north side, we couldn't put those in now.
Right.
Right. So do the south, and I would recommend purchasing all the lighting because that's a real big security and safety issue. And it's already been started, so just finish it off.
To finish it.
And the
finish
public
it
really
south.
liked that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with all that. I really think getting some gates installed, and those were included in our safety priority. I think those are also a really big priority. But I need to look at which ones we could practically install, and then I'd certainly put a vote for the irrigation system if we can figure out what it is we want to pursue there.
Yeah.
And what
I
that
agree.
costs.
Yeah. I agree with the gates, and it's like it's like a psychological boost. If people come along and they see this beautiful gate, it's a aesthetic thing, rather than just the lights.
It's also a safety thing because you're walking along the path and somebody comes zipping up behind you on a motorbike or an AT or something, and
To keep them out.
people can get run over.
Yeah.
I like that you said that, Leah, but I want to also make sure that anyone listening to this and we all here understand that the gates, they definitely look beautiful. They will help with someone did go drive over the mound of dirt at Lincoln Street and got into the park with a car. The gates they have to be ADA accessible, so it's not going to stop motorbikes from being able to get in, unfortunately. Just so we're really clear, it would be wonderful if we could figure out something, but it's hard to find a fair way to do that. So these gates they'll deter some things, but they won't be able to completely deter all motorized vehicles. So this is where, another issue that's going to be important for us to focus on as we move forward is security. Like, how are we going to enforce that there aren't going to be motorized vehicles allowed? So how do we make sure that that's enforced is going to be really important coming forward. But yeah, the gates are the roundabout number for the cost is each one, because they have a little extra design work involved. So building them is a little bit more than just kind of buying a regular gate. They're on the order of $100,000 for each one, I think.
Each?
And yeah, I think so. And again, we don't have the exact numbers. So like Gerald said, it's a little hard to do this, but we do have a lot of priorities first, and we're not going to be able to choose all of them. So this is going to be an important, we'll have to choose one for the other.
Well, since we've already purchased lights, do we have an idea? Stephen, are you still here? Do we have an idea what it costs to buy the lights that are already installed, and how much it would cost to finish that?
I think I saw.
So I believe it's an additional 120,000 to purchase the rest of the lights.
About 140. Okay.
But is that just for south of Bridge Street or north as well?
North as well.
Okay.
No. So,
Because the project called for 52 and we have installed 15. So there's an initial order of 15, so that leaves 37.
so it sounds like we could easily purchase and install the remainder of the lights south and install the benches south. They're already paid for, right?
They're
Mhm.
paid for, and there may be some cost with installing them.
Yeah.
If the city's not able to do it, but
But
yeah.
it sounds like we could cover that and then have money left over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe even for a gate,
Yeah.
or the irrigation seems a higher priority, but
Okay.
Well,
Okay. So I'm sorry. I'm almost done. I think we're I might be in the way. I'm sort of not at home, so I've been a terrible virtual meeting attendee lately, everyone. I apologize for that.
Well,
Okay,
it sounds
so
like, I wonder if we could go ahead and create this temporary prioritized list pending receipt of the numbers from Groundwork Studios. And it sounds like we have finished the lighting and install the benches south of Bridge Street. And then the next tier would be irrigation versus gates, and those we can't make a decision. So it seems like we have kind of a preliminary list of what we could do with that 315,000 that's remaining, and we can make that decision rather quickly once we get the numbers from Groundwork.
I would like to add to that list, and I'll throw it open for discussion, but those auxiliary paths, maybe if we got an idea what those would cost, I think we're not talking about paved, we're talking about, I thought, wood chips or gravel or something. That's another thing that I think the public would really appreciate, because those areas, that's the whole purpose of the park, is to give people access to the river, and right now you just have to bushwhack your way down there. So
okay, so the key thing that we need, as soon as we get the costs for these items, especially, so we know, well, everything, but we need to know what the cost for the irrigation would be in order to decide if that's going to be a priority for sure. The gates they'll have to do them no matter what. So the cost for the auxiliary paths, for instance, if they're not very much money, maybe we can add that up to the top of the priority list, because we might be able to fit it in. So once we have the price tag associated with the things other than lights and benches, because those are pretty well understood, I think we can recommend that those two things should be put in the top priority, because it doesn't even take up kind of the full amount accessible, and it does complete something that's been started. The lights have been started to be installed. The benches have been ordered and are here, so we can just finish doing that instead of waiting too long.
and
then
point of clarification, I think we've applied for money to buy the remainder of the trash cans, right? Lodger's tax money.
Yeah,
So,
we have. I have that meeting tomorrow. So I'm guessing we'll know within the next few weeks if we've got no trash cans.
Okay, great. So as soon as I receive that information about with the price, when I know the price tag, what I'm going to do is email everybody that information when that's finalized. It's probably, we're going to get some information next week and have a little time to look at and respond and adjust anything. So I think they'll get it to us, the final version, early January. Our next meeting is on the calendar for, will everyone help me make sure I'm on the right track? It's the penultimate Monday in January, so it's the third one this time. That's January 17th, right? January 17th.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So before that, I expect to get that information. I can email it to you, and we will also have a sense to, we're talking with the city manager, some of the city councilors, and the utilities director too, to get their input about priorities. And of course, the parks director, I don't mention you, Stephen, because you're right here, but we're talking with everyone making the decision at the city too, to get their sense of the priority. And it really mostly kind of lines up. So there'll just be a little bit of a discussion towards the end about once we know the price tag associated with things. I know we don't have very much more time, and I do want to just mention that Well, let me just leave. Is any questions or concerns just now?
So Beth, are you expecting us to do an email vote of the priorities before the next meeting, or do you think we'll just make those decisions at the next meeting?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, we can give advice about what those are, but really it's ultimately up to whoever decides to buy at the city. I think right now it's the city manager who really has to kind of get down and order thing, kind of, because as I understand. So this is a good point. Maybe Stephen, you can help us get some sense of what would be the most useful. Should we go through, if our time and effort to make votes of priorities would be useful and that would be taken and taken into account, then that's worth our time. But if it's just a suggestion, I don't want to make everybody take a lot of time to vote either. What do you think, Stephen?
I think that this is why the subcommittee got approved, was to get public input for individuals that are closely connected to the project. Now, it is, keep in mind, is we're not policymakers, we're not decision makers, but I think that this committee is respected by mayor and council. And I would encourage, not that we vote through an email, but we actually have a meeting, just like we're having, and we discuss each project, maybe have each committee member list in their order, their priorities, and then that to be decided during a meeting for all public to see what is the altogether the collection of the Riverwalk Subcommittee recommendations to mayor and council that this is the priorities moving forward with the current capital outlay monies that we have and the future.
Okay. That's excellent. Thank you. Yeah, Leah?
I'd like to know what the timing is on the next city council meeting. Stephen, do you know when that is?
I need to look it up. I don't think they sent an email in January.
Because if we miss the January's city council meeting for providing a recommendation, and then it doesn't get into February until February's city council meeting, are we missing an opportunity to take a message to the legislature for our capital outlay request? That's my only concern, is that we put this off 2 months.
Then I would suggest that a special meeting of the subcommittee be held that first week of January, the week of the 3rd, in order for, I don't know if it'll be too late to get on the first meeting in January, but the second meeting so that I can submit a agenda request in order to get the subcommittee on the agenda.
Question though, is our only manner of passing the information of our priority vote to the city through the city council meeting? Can't we just pass that to the councilors and the city manager?
Yes, you can. I just think that it's a to be totally transparent. I think it's a good way, and I think it'd be good for the mayor and council to hear directly from the subcommittee rather than just a submitted report to them.
Okay. I have to move, I'm sorry. This is awkward.
So it sounds like we should try to reschedule or have a special meeting on January the 3rd. Am I correct?
It sounds like, and this would be dependent on if we have our final document from, we're waiting also for the architects
Right.
as well.
Right.
So it would either be the 3rd or the 10th.
Yeah, so like the special meeting can be called at any time. We just need to be done with 72 hours notice. So even if it doesn't work on those Mondays, as long as there's a 72-hour notice, put forth that the meeting's going to be held, you're in compliance with OMA. So I think that's just what I can throw out there, is that it doesn't have to be one of those Mondays. It can be any day, but with the 72-hour notice.
So Beth, you could receive the figures from Groundwork Studio, and then you could call a special meeting 72 hours after you receive those, technically, right?
Well, she can call the meeting right away that day, pending review, but like the notice for the meeting has to go out 72 hours before the meeting would happen.
Okay.
So can you contact Groundwork and ask them to prioritize that information that we need? And maybe they can
Yeah.
put a rush on that and get it to us so we can meet sooner than later.
Yeah, and I think I think it's reasonable to expect that we could be ready to meet that first week in January. Sometime that first week in January. So I'm going to just note that, and I'll keep in touch with you all as that time comes. So what we'll do is give you the draft of the this draft that we receive for the budget, knowing that we have a little bit of room to maneuver, but just so you have time to look at it.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Okay, so we won't define the next meeting now. We'll be ready the first, or at the very worst, the second week in January.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Too.
I